joined next by Richard Simon, CTO Cloud Transformation at T-Systems for our next keynote. Our subject for this one is GenAI and sovereign clouds, innovation versus control. Hi Richard, how are you?
Hey, can you guys hear me okay?
I can indeed. Now I understand you are doing the bravest of brave things, and that is doing a keynote presentation from a conference when you're just attending. So I'm going to stay close in case the signal does drop out. But the virtual floor is yours, and we'll take any questions at the end.
Fantastic. Can you see my slides?
I'm sure we'll be able to in just a moment.
Okay.
Yes, we can. Over to you.
Okay, fantastic. All right, excellent. Well, I can't believe it's actually been a year since the last time I presented. It's an absolute pleasure to be back with you again. So last time I kind of focused really on kind of at the beginning of sort of that whole sort of AI wave, and kind of just really moving away from the sort of consumer side of it a little bit and perhaps a little bit more on the enterprise side. So I thought this time we'll kind of do a little bit of an update on that, so in some of the other aspects that are really sort of affecting this whole space. So obviously generative AI, but also things like sovereign clouds, which are probably more important these days. So we'll kind of try and really go through some of the details in regards to that technology and how the two are really sort of connecting together and working together. So for those who don't know, I work as the Chief Technology Officer for Systems. Been in the industry for 25 plus years. On the basis of different types of roles, I've kind of been mainly in the vendor consulting space. And I'm pretty much kind of an advocate of cloud computing, cloud native open source agent as well. We enjoy doing conferences and speaking, and obviously doing some more information as well later on. Okay, so we'll just kind of start with a sort of a quick update on where things are, and then we'll kind of do a recap on really that sort of generative AI space, and then move on to looking at sort of, what can we see and what's happening in generative AI for this year, and also kind of look at the role of the sovereign clouds. I'll try and give you some time towards the end, hopefully, to do some Q&A. So I will rattle through a lot of these slides fairly quickly, but I'm sure we can make them available. Okay, so in terms of the sort of the market for what's happening in this space, well, obviously there's a lot of digital disruption happening at the moment. IT teams are extremely busy with various different types of technologies and projects and things like that. I'm not going to go through all of these, but suffice to say, we sort of really have our sort of place full, like when it comes to some IT challenges that we have. Obviously, generative AI and AI in general has kind of added to the complexity of those challenges as well. Now, when we move from the sort of the data center into the cloud, there is a number of areas that will change in terms of the operating model that we have. And probably the most important are sort of around security and connectivity, also known as networking. So that kind of tends to change from that sort of static data center going into sort of a more dynamic multi-cloud environment. And that's something to bear in mind as we go through a lot of the content. Okay, one of the other areas that's obviously been quite important recently is what I would call sort of cloud economics. So there are kind of three choices that are available to you there. You can kind of go for the whole sort of strategic approach and FinOps, which gives you really a sort of a framework of how you kind of control and manage your costs and kind of. But there's also kind of more specific tools, very much targeted tools like cloud cost management and optimization. So a number of these tools like Cost, for example, which is an example here, is more targeted really in terms of certain types of resources in the cloud. So rather than kind of being doing a much more sort of broader approach with FinOps, you can certainly do a cloud cost management approach as well. It's kind of a little bit more focused in terms of the areas that it's looking to actually saving costs. Now, the most recent developments been kind of around this area of so-called profiling. So this kind of comes out of that sort of old approach that we used to have called application performance monitoring, or APA. And there's a number of vendors in that space in the past. But the idea is really by saving you on the sort of, or by optimizing your workflows rather in the cloud, we're actually saving you costs as well. So as you optimize your workflows in the cloud, profiling kind of checks on the performance of your applications and the availability and the resources they're using and so on, and really wastage. And because of that, we can actually do some stuff. So cloud economics is another area that's speaking of this. Okay, we've all obviously been aware of the CloudStrike outage, lots of digital ink, shall we say, been used on that. So obviously, again, organizations are looking to see how they can mitigate some of these risks and trying to avoid really sort of catastrophic failures like CloudStrike and avoid those types of outages. So again, this is kind of really blamed on the minds of CIOs and CTOs and IT teams. Also, more recently, the Broadcom sort of acquisition of VMware has kind of caused a number of concerns in the market. So again, customers kind of invested in VMware are really looking for potentially alternative some of the decisions that Broadcom has taken, but these all publicly available stuff have kind of caused like some of those concerns for customers. So there's a lot of kind of this discussion around what are we going to do with VMware? Do we stick with that? Do we go to something else? Do we kind of offer to our managed service and so on? So all of these things are also playing on the minds of IT teams. As I said, that's kind of really causing a lot of focus on in terms of the impact that the Broadcom acquisition has caused. And obviously, one of those impacts is really the increase in price. We're seeing some of the numbers have been astronomically as far as this is concerned. So again, all of that is major concern. So with all of that in mind, our sort of cloud maturity model really has to be rock solid. Our cloud strategy has to be something that we need to have for both the immediate future, but also the long-term future. We can't kind of have a strategy that's sort of back of an envelope type of design. It has to be a well thought out, well considered sort of thing, and that will help us to get out of some of these issues that we might encounter as we progress these information. Okay, so general recap on GenAI. So this is kind of really focusing on what's been happening in the last sort of 12 months. So we've kind of gone over maybe that initial sort of hype where, the robots are coming and we're all going to die sort of thing. I think that's kind of, but it's been put aside for a short while anyway. So the apocalypse, the AI apocalypse is not on this quite a lot. But kind of just moving beyond these sort of headlines, we looked last time in terms of, why generative AI now, why this now, and we discovered that things like the transformer technology and organizations like GenAI having kind of a vision, and then the likes of Microsoft sort of backing that was really kind of the catalyst for things like the plasma production GPT. Okay, and since then we've kind of gone a bit wild in 24. People have kind of created all sorts of really wonderful things, AI chatbots, creating their own company, and going off and sort of doing various things, and generating that sort of capability all under using for less than $1 in terms of the activity that the software is actually doing. So we had that kind of sort of weird experiment happening. I actually wrote an article in terms of, this was I think in March last year, and what I was trying to do is really kind of focus on what is going to be the way that really enterprise is going to implement that. So what kind of use cases or things like that, but actually how is it going to be implemented? What are we going to do? How are we going to do that? What does that sort of AI platform that I'm going to use look like? So I kind of really came up with a sort of a 3-level sort of way where you can actually approach that. So you can sort of build it and train it yourself, which is probably prohibitively expensive for most organizations. You can kind of borrow a model, so you can kind of get somebody else's foundational model and make use of that, and customize the foundational models for that sort of AI apps. Or you can actually just say, look, I'm not in the AI business, but I would like to use it. So I'm just going to really upload all my data sets into an AI model that's maybe even market specific, that's actually focused on one market sector, whether I'm in manufacturing or health or finance or legal or whatever it is. And that's what I want to do. I want to just make use of a model rather than actually having to build it myself. And this is, I think, where there's a huge amount of confusion that I'm seeing in terms of, do we build it ourselves and kind of run off and try and do that, or do we kind of just make use of something that already exists, like an AI SaaS sort of solution, if you like. Now, the other side of that, of course, is things like AI agents as well, software agents as well happening. So, we've had some false starts like Devon, for example, which was an announcement made, I think, spring last year. Was kind of, it was touted to be the first sort of AI software engineer. I don't really know what the latest is on this, but there was a lot of backlash on it back then, and a lot of people kind of, were not taken in by the sort of the Devon effect. So people kind of found flaws in terms of how Devon was actually generating code and doing all the work and sort of responding to prompts and various other things. So all of that was kind of debunked somewhat online by various people who were kind of enthusiastic into that sort of space. So beyond that, we've kind of had things like the Strawberry model, the O1 model from OpenAI, which is kind of the first sort of in that space where it's kind of a thinking tool. It's kind of looking at the app and considering the app before it can actually provide a response to a query. So this actually has impressed people. People have actually kind of looked at this and said, this is really good. And it's kind of that sort of level where it can sort of be at least your development components. If you are a developer, it can certainly help a great deal in that space and kind of companion to the to actually develop applications in an impressive way. Okay, so 2025, what's kind of happening now? So basically, we're kind of really seeing the age of AI sort of maturing, the models and the capabilities expanding. We've had like a plethora of models over the last 12 months, and I don't think that sort of models kind of race or wars is going to really end anytime soon. I think that's going to continue for them. But because of, like I said, that earlier confusion that we had, there has been a little bit of a sort of confusion again and disappointment in terms of sort of generative AI. So if you kind of look at the chart on the right here by Gartner, you'll see that actually less than 10% of organizations actually have a generative AI sort of platform in production actually in use in their organizations. Majority are still sort of assessing, and maybe a kind of third is kind of somewhere in the sort of piloting phase. But the kind of the number to focus on is that 9%, which says that's the only amount that you have actually in production on AI. And I think that's actually, if you were kind of sensible with the approach and sensible with kind of the understanding of how this is going to work out and what you're going to do and how long it's going to take and so on. This is really actually the facts that you perceive from this whole sort of space and all the hype around sort of AI generative AI. So in terms of focus, again, we're seeing lots of sort of organizations focusing on security and obviously generative AI in general, all being part of that. But again, we're not seeing a lot of that in production. And I think that's, like I said, if you understood that kind of market and looked into that market, you would come to the same conclusion as well. Okay, so Gartner talked about the sort of the sandwich, the AI technology sandwich. So this kind of really, again, sort of explains a little bit more of that sort of a similar approach to how you can kind of get things really implemented. So, despite, as we said, that sort of rapid innovation, a lot of CIOs are still struggling, as we said, with that sort of ROI expectation. And I think this will probably carry on for 2025 until people really sort of understand the implications of how people can make use of these solutions and platforms in enterprise. The other area to look at is agentic AI. Obviously, this is an eye chart, so I don't expect it to read any of that. But the idea is to kind of show you this whole area where we are basically doing, we're kind of moving towards AI agents. So that sort of landscape and that market space is expanding. We'll probably see Quite a lot of these come in on the consumer side. We've already seen quite a few of them, but we'll see a lot more maturity of these into the summer of this year and into what is the end of 2025 as well. And then eventually, I think we'll probably see a lot of these kind of being more pervasive like in the enterprise space as well. I think in most cases, we've seen with things like ChatGPT, we kind of start with the consumer side and from there. And agentic AI or AI agents are really just kind of front end GenAI models that are trying to really perform one task or kind of be good at a number or a handful of tasks for you. So whether it's kind of booking your next flight or scheduling your calendar or offering you some cooking recipes or whatever kind of suggestions. This is really kind of the idea of sort of hiring these AI agents running around doing some of these tasks. How complex that is going to be and kind of how progressive we'll see that in the next few years. But for 2025, it's kind of the sort of kind of maturity space that we're seeing, we're going to see, and we'll kind of look in terms of the end of the year, kind of how far we've actually matured with that, what's actually practically available, and out there that we can trust and make use of in the works. Okay, but a perfect example is already kind of there is really writing code. So AI models are very, very good at writing code. So I actually sat through this webinar from AWS this summer of last year. So based on their AWS Bedrock Playground environment, they demonstrated how Bedrock can actually kind of generate code for you. So they made the choice of this particular model from Anthropic, the model. They generated a picture, a JPEG file, with a very rudimentary sort of AWS architecture design, with components, sort of client and backend database and so on. And then they prompted this model, this Claude 3 model, and said, pretend you are an AWS solutions architect, and I'm going to feed you an image. So they uploaded this image into them. And the model was able to actually discern what the picture was, what was in the picture, and actually trying to give an English description, text description of what it could see in the picture and all the dependencies and the lines connecting all the stuff. Now they went one further on that, so that's kind of giving you the details of that. They went one further and they said, okay, so can you actually generate a cloud formation code based on that? So the cloud formation is the AWS tool that just allows you to write a script to kind of create a cloud environment in AWS. So they asked the model to actually do that. And lo and behold, the model immediately spat out a whole code, a bunch of code that was for cloud formations that could actually generate, using that code, this is kind of in that sort of infrastructure as code space, it could actually generate that cloud environment that was in the picture using this cloud formation script. And then they went one further step in this. So can you now translate that cloud formation template into a Terraform code? So Terraform is a third-party tool from HashiCorp, which kind of does a similar thing that can address multiple platforms and multiple clouds. And again, the model was happy to actually translate them as well. So you can see from just a picture, we're able to actually drop that into a model, ask the model to actually understand what's in the picture, it gives us a translation, and then we can go beyond that and take it to the next step and say, can we write the code that this, that's based on that, what's actually representative of this particular picture, based on a particular platform, say the transformation platform. So that's all great. That's all wonderful. That's kind of the sort of thing I think that we will probably see a lot more of happening, but you can go into that already with AWS Spectrum. So clearly that is kind of a helpful area. And as we said, if we broaden that, we can look at kind of, AI or GenAI sort of generating code for us. And a lot of these tools, a lot of these so-called agents are really there. So if you look at GitHub, there's a Copilot available within GitHub that helps you to kind of generate code. So again, you're not having to necessarily write code from scratch. If there's certain aspects of your code that are very repetitive or somebody's already done it, and maybe you could actually make use of those types of code examples. A lot of the stuff we used to do on websites in the past, we used to go to Stack Overflow and so on, and search there and download a piece of code. incorporate it into our application, but now we can kind of generate it automatically using these trade genetics. Okay, so where does kind of really sovereign cloud come into this? And what is kind of sovereign cloud all about? And how can we balance the innovation and the control? So certainly it's a thing. It's happening. It's something that's actually it has been happening actually for quite a while. So sovereign clouds are kind of been around for a while. Maybe kind of a little bit more driven these days, with things like sort of GenAI models. How you actually implement GenAI in your enterprise. So with the rise of that, it's kind of getting more crucial. We get to understand where is that model, where's the data from, as kind of using prompts and as dealing with our prompts, and where's all of that based on. Now, there's obviously the consumer models, the general public models, and the co-pilots and ChatGPTs and the world. And those you kind of taking chances with those as you agree to the requirements and the rules for how you actually use those things, and you basically going to use them as people. But for enterprises, it's different, or at least we kind of want to look at things differently. We protect our IP and protect our data, and not make that publicly available. So really, sovereign cloud is kind of the space that you potentially consider to actually do that, and a lot of organizations have become the customers that we engage with are already actually doing that. So it's kind of been the mainstay for things like public sector, things like GovCloud and what have you. Those have kind of been the majority uses. But now, because of things like AI and generative specifically, we're seeing a lot more interest in that space to see how people can actually protect their IP and protect their models, essentially. And obviously, if you're in a sort of a regulated market, so things like finance and health and so on, again, there is definitely scope to consider something else. Okay, so what is actually a sovereign cloud? Well, I don't think it's a kind of a real, get hold of sort of definition, international definition, or standard definition for sovereign clouds, but there is a consensus in terms of the sort of things that you would expect maybe from a sovereign cloud environment. And that would include things like technology sovereignty. So it's kind of waste of things. So you're kind of ensuring control and independence of your sort of everything, really from the design to development to the provisioning of the technology. They actually provision those workflows and how you actually build it. And obviously, this helps with things like more traditional things like vendor lock-in. Some of them, or majority of them, is open source. Some of them actually even some of that sort of technology developed locally within that region. So this covers things like location, hardware, software, APIs, and gateways, and things as well. The other aspect is operational sovereignty. So actually, when it comes to operating the environment, how you kind of maintain control in terms of the operation, the execution, and the management as well of key operations and processes. So actually, how you manage your sovereign cloud environment in general, sovereign clouds actually help with that sort of capability as well, because they provide sort of localized security and management So as we said, also things like availability as part of that. But generally, things like you expect your monitoring, your observability, engineering, service management, and even like I said, the cloud ops sort of processes and frameworks that you put in place will all be sovereign in that region. And obviously, the biggest one maybe is around data sovereignty. So this is about sort of having full control, access, ownership, regulation, compliance over that data, and where the data is stored, physically, it can be physical digital stuff, and how it's processed, and the kind of the sort of the legal stuff in terms of using it, and maybe even sort of ethical boundaries for specific data or third-party data and so on. So all of that kind of must remain within the sort of national or regional or geopolitical sort of boundaries, or like the block, for example. That's kind of really where data sovereignty is increasing. And as you said, that in terms of sort of the mechanics of that, storage, transfer, data being in-flight or request, the encryption of the data specifically actually gets control access to. So these are the three main areas of kind of what you would really expect from a solution. Like I said, there's lots of variations on this, depending on the vendors and some of the solutions. That's the technology, the operational aspect of the data. Okay, so why would you want to choose that? Well, we kind of touched on it a little bit for sort of, generative AI and enterprise adopting that. And we said that really, GenAI workloads are no different from the other one. They still need that kind of protection, security, and so on. So if it's a sensitive area, regulated market, I think that kind of sector will need protection and security. Enterprises, you said, generally speaking, they can strengthen their security and territory control using sovereign clouds. If you kind of, as I said, in terms of compliance, so things like mandars, sovereign class connection, that way of security. Also, protection from other laws external to the geography that you're actually living in. Companies so extraterritorial laws would be part of that. Although maybe even ETs are would be protected with ETs as well. Now, but certainly things like the X Cloud and again, when it comes to actual models, it's about security and protection of intellectual property. And again, as we said, last but not least, some encryption layer, with things like confidential things being part of sovereign clouds in the access on. Okay, so T systems help with all of this. Well, we have a couple of sovereign clouds in this sort of the sovereign cloud space. So you can actually look at our open sovereign cloud solution, which is an open source platform that has things like information. And we also have a partnership with Google to actually have like a sort of a sovereignty layer on top of the Google Cloud platform. So the standard sort of GCP, we offer aspects of sovereignty around that, and that's services from Google as well as infrastructure. So there's a set of options that you can actually consider. Now, beyond that, T Systems also obviously does lots of other things. We talked about cloud economics, so certainly help us possibly in that sort of VMware dilemma. Again, we have the price on that. We're partners with all of the public clouds providers, so Google, Microsoft, Amazon. Partners to us again, we look into that. Also, we have a really good partnership with SAP. So if you're looking at SAP HANA or migration, SAP Rise, and so on. And as I said, if you're looking to really migrate into public cloud, regardless of where you're coming from, we have migration. Okay, that's the end of my presentation. As I said, just a shameless plug, I do have a YouTube channel called The Cloud Therapist. So there are lots of talks about the cloud and native, open source, AI, and so on. There's lots of different types of segments of the channel. So if you're interested in learning a little bit more about these things, I try to kind of keep it at the sea level. I do sometimes just dive a little bit deeper into the tech side of it. But if you're interested in kind of learning about some of these things that are happening and feel free to subscribe to the channel. All right, thank you very much.
Richard, thank you very much indeed. You were fighting desperately against a few audio problems there because I think of your location. So I hope everyone got the general gist of what you were saying and do pick up on, as you were saying, those extra content sources you were suggesting at the end. So Richard, I'm afraid we're going to have to wrap it there. We were fighting with the technicals a tiny bit throughout there, but thank you so much for joining us here at Cloud and 5G Live.
Pleasure. No problem.
Pleasure. Thanks so much. Thank you very much.